Dear students, please open your textbook before you start listening. Underline important lines and mark difficult words. Use earphone or headphone for full concentration. Happy listening and happy learning. Page number 13. Topic 3. The Age of Revolutions 1830 to 1848. As conservative regimes tried to consolidate their power, liberalism and nationalism came to be increasingly associated with revolution in many regions of Europe, such as the Italian and German states, the provinces of the Ottoman Empire, Ireland, and Poland. These revolutions were led by the liberal nationalists belonging to the educated middle class elite, among whom were professors, school teachers, clerks, and members of the commercial middle classes. The first upheaval took place in France in July 1830. The Bourbon king, who had been restored to power during the conservative reaction after 1815, were now overthrown by liberal revolutionaries who installed a constitutional monarchy with Louis Philippe at its head. When France sneezes, Metternich once remarked, the rest of Europe catches cold. The July Revolution sparkled an uprising in Brussels which led to Belgium breaking away from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, an event that mobilized nationalist feeling among the educated elite across Europe was the Greek War of the Independence. Greece had been part of the Ottoman Empire since the 15th century. The growth of revolutionary nationalism in Europe is part of a struggle for independence amongst the Greeks, which began in 1821. Nationalists in Greece got support from other Greeks living in exile and also from many West Europeans who had sympathized for ancient Greek culture. Poets and artists lauded Greece as the cradle of European civilization and mobilized public opinion to support its struggle against a Muslim empire. The English poet Lord Byron organized funds and later went to fight in the war, where he died of fever in 1824. Finally, the Treaty of Constantinople of 1832 recognized Greece as an independent nation. 3.1 The Romantic Imagination and National Feeling. The development of nationalism did not come about only through wars and territorial expansions. Culture played an important role in creating the idea of the nation. Art and poetry, stories and music helped express and shape nationalist feelings. Let us look at Romanticism, a cultural movement which sought to develop a particular form of nationalist sentiment. Romantic artists and poets generally criticized the glorification of reason and science and focused instead on emotions, intuitions, and mystical feelings. Page number 14. Their effort was to create a sense of a shared collective heritage, a common cultural past, as the basis of a notion. Other romantics, such as German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder, 1744 to 1803, claimed that true German culture was to be discovered among the common people, das Volk. It was through folk song, folk poetry, and folk dances that the true spirit of the nation, Volksgeist, was popularized. So, collecting and recording these forms of folk culture was essential to the project of nation building. In this page, figure 8 is given. In that, the massacre at Chios, Eugene Delacroix, 1824. The French painter Delacroix was one of the most important French Romantic painters. This huge painting, 4.19 meter into 3.54 meter, depicts an incident in which 20,000 Greeks were said to have been killed by Turks on the island of Chios. By dramatizing the incident, focusing on the suffering of women and children, and using vivid color, Delacroix sought to appeal to the emotions of the spectators and create sympathy for the Greeks. Page number 15. The emphasis on vernacular language and the collection of local folklore was not just to recover an ancient national spirit, but also to carry the modern nationalist message to large audiences who were mostly illiterate. This was especially so in the case of Poland, which had been partitioned at the end of the 18th century by the great powers, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Even though Poland no longer existed as an independent territory, national feelings were kept alive through music and language. Karol Karpinski, for example, celebrated the national struggle through his operas and music, turning folk dances like the Polonaise and mazurka into nationalist symbols. Language too played an important role in developing nationalist sentiment. After Russian occupation, the Polish language was forced out of school and the Russian language was imposed everywhere. In 1831, an armed rebellion against Russian rule took place, which was ultimately crushed. Following this, many members of the clergy in Poland began to use language as a weapon of national resistance. Polish was used for church gathering and all religious instruction. As a result, a large number of priests and bishops were put in jail or sent to Siberia by the Russian authorities as punishment for their refusal to preach in Russian. The use of Polish came to be seen as a symbol of the struggle against Russian dominance. 3.2 Hunger, Hardship, and Popular Revolt. The 1830s were years of great economic hardship in Europe. The first half of the 19th century saw an enormous increase in population all over Europe. In most countries, there were more seekers of job than employment. Population from rural areas migrated to the cities to live in overcrowded slums. Small producers in town were often faced with stiff competition from imports of cheap machine-made goods from England, where industrialization was more advanced than on the continent. This was especially so in textile production, which was carried out mainly in homes or small workshops and was only partly mechanized. In those regions of Europe where the aristocracy still enjoyed power, peasants struggled under the burden of feudal dues and obligations. The rise of food prices or a year of bad harvest led to widespread pauperism in town and country. The year 1848 was one such year. Food shortages and widespread unemployment brought the population of Paris out on the roads. Barricades were erected, and Louis Philippe was forced to flee. In the column, the Grimm brothers, Folktale and Nation Building. Grimm's fairy tale is a familiar name. The brothers Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm were born in the German city of Hanau in 1785 and 1786 respectively. While both of them studied law, they soon developed an interest in collecting old folk tales. They spent 6 years traveling from village to village, talking to people and writing down fairy tales, which were handed down through the generations. These were popular both among children and adults. In 1812, they published their first collection of tales. Subsequently, both the brothers became active in liberal politics, especially the movement for freedom of the press. In the meantime, they also published a 33-volume dictionary of the German language. The Grimm brothers also saw French domination as a threat to German culture and believed that the folk tales they had collected were expressions of a pure and authentic German spirit. They considered their project of collecting folk tales and developing the German language as part of the wider effort to oppose French dominations and create a German national identity. In the column discuss the importance of language and popular traditions in the creation of national identity. Page number 16. A National Assembly proclaimed a republic, granted suffrage to all adult males above 21, and guaranteed the right to work. National workshop to provide employment were set up. Earlier in 1845, weavers in Silesia had led a revolt against contractors who supplied them raw material and gave them orders for finished textile, but drastically reduced their payments. The journalist Wilhelm Wolff described the events in Silesian village as follows. In this village, with 18,000 inhabitants, cotton weaving is the most widespread occupation. The misery of the workers is extreme. The desperate need for job has been taken advantage of by the contractor to reduce the prices of the goods they order. On 4 June at 2 p.m., a large crowd of weavers emerged from their home and marched in pairs up to the mansion of their contractor demanding higher wages. They were treated with scorn and threats alternately. Following this, a group of them forced their way into the house, smashed its elegant window, pans, furniture, porcelain. Another group broke into the storehouse and plundered it of supplies of cloth which they tore to shreds. The contractor fled with his family to a neighboring village, which, however, refused to shelter such a person. He returned 24 hours later, having re-questioned the army. In the exchange that followed, 11 weavers were shot. In the column describe the cause of the Silesian weavers' uprising. Comment on the viewpoint of the journalist. In the column activity, imagine you are a weaver who saw the events as they unfolded. Write a report on what you saw. Page number 17. 3.3. 1848. The Revolution of the Liberals. Parallel to the revolts of the poor, unemployed, and starving peasants and workers in many European countries in the year 1848, a revolution led by the educated middle classes was underway. Events of February 1848 in France had brought about the abdiction of the monarchs, and a republic based on universal male suffrage had been proclaimed. In other parts of Europe where independent nation states did not yet exist, such as Germany, Italy, Poland, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, men and women of the liberal middle classes combined their demands for constitutionalism with national unification. They took advantage of the growing popular unrest to push their demands for the creation of a nation state on parliamentary principles, a constitution, freedom of the press, and freedom of associations. In the German region, a large number of political associations whose members were middle class professionals, businessmen, and prosperous artisans came together in the city of Frankfurt and decided to vote for an all German National Assembly. On 18 May 1848, 831 elected representatives marched in a festive procession to take their places in the Frankfurt Parliament convened in the Church of St. Paul. They drafted a constitution for a German nation to be headed by a monarchy subjected to a parliament. When the deputies offered the crown on these terms to Friedrich Wilhelm IV, King of Prussia, he rejected it and joined other monarchies to oppose the elected assembly. While the opposition of the aristocracy and military became stronger, the social basis of parliament eroded. The parliament was dominated by the middle classes, who resisted the demands of workers and artisans and consequently lost their support. In the end, troops were called in and the assembly was forced to disband. The issue of extending political right to women was a controversial one within the liberal movement, in which large number of women had participated actively over the years. Women had formed their own political associations, founded newspapers, and taken part in political meetings and demonstrations. Despite this, they were denied. In the column New Words, feminist awareness of women's rights and interest based on the belief of the social, economic, and political equality for the genders. Source C. How were liberty and equality for women to be defined? The liberal politician Karl Welker, an elected member of the Frankfurt Parliament, expressed the following views. Nature has created man and woman to carry out different functions. Man, the stronger, the bolder, and freer of the two, has been designated as protector of the family, its provider, meant for public tasks in the domain of law, production, defense. Woman, the weaker, dependent, and timid, requires the protection of man. Her sphere is the home, the care of the children, the nurturing of the family. Do we require any further proof that given such differences, equality between the sexes would only endanger harmony and destroy the dignity of the family? Louis Otto Peters, 1819 to 1895, was a political activist who founded a women's journal and subsequently a feminist political association. The first issue of her newspaper, 21st April 1849, carried the following editorial. Let us ask how many men, possessed by thought of living and dying for the sake of liberty, would be prepared to fight for the freedom of the entire people, of all human beings. When asked this question, they would all too easily respond with a yes, though their untiring efforts are intended for the benefit of only one half of humanity, man. But liberty is indivisible. Free man therefore must not tolerate to be surrounded by the unfree. An anonymous reader of the same newspaper sent the following letter to the editor on 25th June 1850. It is indeed ridiculous and unreasonable to deny women political right even though they enjoy the right to property which they make use of. They perform functions and assume responsibilities without, however, getting the benefit that accrue to man for the same. Why this injustice? It is not a disgrace that even the stupidest cattle herder possesses the right to vote simply because he is a man, whereas highly talented women owning considerable property are excluded from this right, even though they contribute so much to the maintenance of the state. Thank you, students. Please listen twice for better understanding. Hope you liked the video and subscribe for upcoming videos.